Western literature and cross-cultural elements. 3.1 Ian Forster's The Role from Colonus and Cross-Cultural Elements. This unit is concerned with Western literature and cross-cultural elements. Let's start with cross-cultural narrative forms. Cross-cultural narrative forms may be categorized by common characteristics or tropes shared by cross-cultural writers. Examples include exoticism or primitivism. Cross-cultural narratives tend to incorporate elements such as cultural shock, further cultural shock upon returning home, overcoming social obstacles in another country, social obstacles such as discrimination, racism, prejudice, stereotypes, linguistic difficulties, and most importantly, travel writing. The Role from Colonus was written by Ian Forster. It was published in 1911. Firstly, let me give you a summary of this story. The protagonist is Mr. Lucas, who is an Englishman. He is growing old. He has always wanted to visit Greece and has finally achieved this goal, accompanied by his unmarried daughter Ethel. As it has been assumed, his daughter will dedicate her life to taking care of him in his old age. In Greece, Mr. Lucas becomes restless and resistant to the idea of an expected, passive, peaceful death that will eventually happen in his old age. As an old man, Mr. Lucas wants to live with a young heart. Something mysterious in Greece happens. He finds a great old hollow tree from which a spring of water flows. He climbs into the tree and experiences an epiphany. He seems to retrieve his youth and sees all things as intelligible and good. He does not feel that anyone can share this revelation he has experienced, and he becomes afraid that if he leaves this place, he will lose the feeling himself. He decides not to leave and sets his plan to stay at inn near the old tree, but the others are horrified and force him to leave with them. Sometime later in England, Mr. Lucas's daughter Ethel is now about to be married. Mr. Lucas has become a displeased old man, complaining about everything, especially the sound of water in the plumbing. The mysterious Greek spring has been reduced to this annoyance. He says, "There's nothing I dislike more than running water." His sister Julia, whom he hates, is going to take care of him once Ethel is married. Then a gift arrives from a friend in Greece, wrapped in a Greek newspaper. Ethel reads the news in the newspaper that on the night they left, the old tree was blown down and fell on the family who kept the inn nearby, killing them all. Ethel is upset and says how lucky it was that they hadn't stayed there that night, calling it a marvelous deliverance. But her father has no interest in this news. Mr. Lucas no longer cares. Now let me tell you in what way this story can be seen as a cross-cultural narrative. First, it is a kind of travel writing. It is part travelogue, part fiction. The first paragraph depicts how Mr. Lucas arrives in Greece. Let me read aloud this paragraph for you. Mr. Lucas had hurried ahead of his party. He was perhaps reaching the age at which independence becomes valuable, because it is so soon to be lost. Tired of attention and consideration, He liked breaking away from the younger members, to ride by himself, and to dismount unassisted. The third paragraph compares and contrasts the trees in Greece and those in England. It depicts something very Greek. Let me read aloud this paragraph for you. Even in England, those trees would have been remarkable. So huge were they, so interlaced, so magnificently clothed, in quivering green, and here in Greece they were unique. The one cool spot in that brilliant landscape, already scorched by the heat of an April sun, in their midst was hidden a tiny home or country inn, a frail mud building with a broad wooden balcony in which sat an old woman spinning, while a small brown pig eating orange peel stood beside her on the wet earth below. Squatted two children playing some primeval game with their fingers, and their mother, none too clean either, was messing with some rice inside. As Mrs. Foreman would have said, it was all very Greek. And the fastidious Mr. Lucas felt thankful that they were bringing their own food with them, and should eat it in the open air. This is the third paragraph, which creates a sense of exoticism, especially to Mr. Lucas. In paragraph 6, a comparison between Greece and England is made in terms of Mr. Lucas's feeling as an old man. Greece was like England. It was a man who was growing old, and it made no difference whether that man looked at the Thames or the Eurotas. Afterwards, Mr. Lucas finds water out of a hollow tree in Greece. He stopped still in amazement, saying, "Water out of a tree, out of a hollow tree. I never saw nor thought of that before." Then he wants to possess the sweet water from the tree. He said, "The place should be mine. I would enter it and possess it." In part 2 in England, Mr. Lucas cannot stand the noise of running water.